We're Jolene Armstrong and Monique Tschofen, and we're two members of the Decameron Collective, a feminist research creation collective from 6 universities in Canada. Our talk today is deeply informed by conversations and writing projects with all of our collaborator and co-creators. In this video, we'll offer a walkthrough and explanation of the research creation, address what our research questions were, describe our methodology, and finally, talk about the significance of the research creation in answering the research question.
Named after the Ukrainian Orthodox prayer for the dead, Memory Eternal is a single-user virtual reality work designed for Quest 2 that features 17 distinct storytelling works, which include 360 video, interactive and spatialized sound, AI-generated images and video, film, as well as text. The works investigate our shared experiences of grief and loss at personal, societal, and planetary scales. The design of the world and the works in it center around a question. In the wake of crises, what do we remember and how?
Memory Eternal is the second major work from our collective, following on the heels of the Decameron 2.0, a story world built in 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 that was modeled after a 14th century narrative by 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 set in the Great Plague of Florence. The heartbeat of that work was the idea of storytelling as a life-saving act. Over weekly Zoom meetings that had begun in March of 2020, we produced and shared a body of over 100 works of poetry, stories, music, and images that documented our lives during the pandemic.
To disseminate the world, we then took on roles of curators and adapters of each other's works. Each member was tasked with designing a gallery space to hold a number of thematically related works, and then worked with collaborators on digital adaptations of the stories, poems, and images. Our process, which we summarized with the shorthand create, collaborate, curate, was conceptualized around the idea of the gift, designed to acknowledge the other.
What this meant in practice is that in finding ways to digitally disseminate our stories, we made works not only with each other, but also for each other. We not only kept space for each other's stories, we made space for them to go into. For example, a collective member might take one person's poem and create a film using images or musical treatment from another collective member and offer it in recognition of the way they valued the insights and experiences of both. Each new work's creation thus reflected the collaborative and relational nature of the collective's work.
By the time we began Memory Eternal, the times and our moods had shifted. Years of pandemic overtime, chaotic return to in-class teaching, exhaustion from caregiving roles of children and elders, and trauma from hard losses had begun to make it harder for the entire collective to gather for weekly meetings. Our objectives with Memory Eternal at the outset were conceptual. We were looking to see how interactive forms could engage mourning.
With the goal of experimenting with the affordances of immersive and interactive media, we decided to leave 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 behind and design a standalone world for Quest 2. Our approach was informed by our various academic backgrounds, just as it was influenced by our established art practices in experimental cinema, video games, and immersive VR. While Decameron 2.0 was the culmination of 2 years' worth of weekly creating for the sake of creation, Memory Eternal contained works specifically created for mourning our individual losses collectively.
We'll now show you a short drive-through of the world that represents some of the works in Memory Eternal. The world is currently available for download from our webpage at 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏
For those of us who did not have the time to grieve, there will come a time. For those of us who did not have the time to grieve, we could not sit with emotion. We put emotion behind lock and door, shoved into a laundry hamper to consider later.
Пустой.
Missed you by seconds, it appears. Anyways, have a good day. I'm having a reasonably good day today. Actually, it's sunny, it's cool, and I made a bit of a food run earlier for blueberries at $1.50 a pint, so I'm kind of excited. And I also bought an eggplant. That's cheap, but I still don't know what to do with an eggplant. You know what to do with an eggplant? See you later. Bye.
Spell for holding time together. Crumple that sadness for just a moment. Just a moment. Please. This is just it. A thread of orange begins to form on your forehead. Flows down. A thread of orange flows down to a root system. Perhaps a houseplant. Perhaps a bloom outdoors.
The Decameron Collective is funded by a SSHRC research creation grant, and many of us are experienced working in these modes and publishing on the methods. Our conception of research creation is probably most aligned with Stephanie Springay and Aaron Manning's. We believe that positing the conditions or terms of research before the exploration or experimentation results in stultifying its potential and relegating it to that which already fits within pre-existing schemata of knowledge. Working with 9 busy women has encouraged us to become comfortable with states of not knowing, of fumbling towards coherence, and trusting our spontaneous intellectual and creative abilities. We begin with an intention, often thematic. Broader research questions emerge through the creation and engagement with each other as co-creators, as well as with audiences and scholars. Emergence dictates the creation and development of the world, but retroactive theorization of the world draws out entanglements not only between the world's technical conceptual elements, but also between the theorists and the emergents, the text and the emergents, the theorists and others, and this is all in a generative fashion. For example, it was only in retrospect that the world's connection to media archaeology, feminist new materialism, experimental film, or the foundations of its rich epistemology of hope became visible to us, and what the implications of these connections are for an understanding of the experience and further scholarly and theoretical consideration.
This practice of emergence allows for the making of surprising connections as we follow threads we previously did not know existed. Emergence allows us to think along multiple axes simultaneously, spatially, temporally, thematically, linearly, and through juxtaposition. We alternately center our own and users' experience. Emergence centers the dialogical. We hold long discussions over multiple digital platforms including Zoom, Google Docs, Facebook Messenger, Discord, and Miro boards. As such, emergence is a strategy that offers a resistance to rigid methodologies by privileging interaction over results.
Our research objectives at the outset were simple. We were looking to see how interactive forms could facilitate memory work in response to the many losses we were grieving at personal, social, and planetary scales.
We posed a number of research questions with this work.
The first question we asked had to do with how we work together, centering care. Our speculative feminist praxis is non-hierarchical, dialogic, and asks implicitly and explicitly what forms of futurity can be attained through digital storytelling and research co-creation. Memory Eternal results from years-long conversations, inquiry, and experimentation between the members of the group, and we practice a kind of real-world care work that has profound implications for how we do the work of academics. The bedrock of this practice, in turn, is essential to the vision we try to share with others.
The second emerged from a drive to document and bear witness. We produced the work of art at the start of the full-scale invasion of war against Ukraine. Public health officials were announcing the end of the pandemic that even today continues to take lives, and were downplaying the impact of climate change while smoke from forest fires in Western Canada was obstructing daylight as far away as Europe. Collective forgetting was everywhere, and so we began to think of all the genres that do collective memory work.
We contemplated a wide range of collective memory practices, the elegy and eulogy, home movies and collage, as well as cantor memorials, cantor monuments, archives, and anarchives. Angela Yusse, our partner, has considered the world a living archive, which Amalia Sabiescu uses to describe sites of collective memory that align different temporalities to bring participants as well as memory-mediating texts into a shared, co-located space. The revival of the past here is rendered as an emergent site of collective and personal memorialization that invites public participation. What we settled on, however, was an ancient funeral rite. The title of the work came to us after Jolene attended an Eastern Orthodox funeral and described it as a nearly hallucinogenic immersive experience involving all of the senses. Thinking about mourning rites let us rationalize why this work needed to be made in VR. We wanted Interactants to have an embodied and immersive experience. And so, the design of the landscape of the world became connected to our thinking about the living and the dying. At the very center of the world, we created a work called In Memoriam, in a candlelit broken tower where the names of our dead are listed, and the music is the Ukrainian Mass, Memory Eternal, the namesake of the world.
The river encircling the world was intended to recall the Greek rivers of lamentation, sorrow, and forgetting. The tree at the center invokes the Norse tree of life, Yggdrasil, that connects the 9 worlds, including the underworld, Niflheim, the earth, Midgard, and the realm of the gods. St. Bridget's crosses mark the Irish patron saint whose celebration marks the beginning of spring. The barrow, which sits at the center of the world, reflects ancient European methods of burial, spaces which inherently reflect women's roles in the care of the dead and mourning rituals. The large dome covered in ivy demarcates an imaginative space for thinking about our connections to nature and cyclical journeying, and the ruins of a home stand in for the destruction through war of domestic space. Immersants are given an opportunity to think about memory and mourning as a form of cyclical journeying. They enter dark spaces, sit with grief, and emerge on the other side.
The third research question we asked followed from the others. Creating for Oculus allowed us to ask what immersion and haptics could add to the experience of bearing witness. Harnessing VR's capacities to construct haptic and affective experiences, the visual, auditory, and sensory structures of the world invite bodily, participatory entanglements ranging from contemplative stillness to distress. Travel through the world invites somatic participation with the works and the potential for creators and immersants to critique and further theorize the affects of mourning, grief, and loss that the work urges us to consider. The illusion of three-dimensionality allows the immersant to feel surrounded and enveloped. This bodily involvement is rare, and usually in the arts is only felt in installation, dance, or theater. So we turn to somatic theory, a mode of bodily thinking, in which sensing is immaterial and elusive, rather than concrete and predictable, to think about this aspect of our work.
Works like Jolene Armstrong's Slava Ukraini harnesses VR's capacity for haptics to bear witness, pinned to the viewer's visor, leaving them unable to orient. Morphing images and immersive gunshot staccato heightens, fine-tunes, and focuses immersant's own latent emotions. In Harney and Moten's words, these works amplify the capacity to feel through others, for others to feel through you, for you to feel them feeling you.
Our fourth research question asks how our world can create spaces of encounter that bring diverse, heterogeneous, and yet overlapping experiences together. Memory Eternal stands apart from many designed VR projects in that the point was never to make a seamless experience. Immersants are asked to make space for and hold a diversity of cares and concerns, and in so doing, allow for their own experiences of loss to become entangled with those represented in the world. The Decameron Collective believes that entanglements that are richly interrelational but refuse coherence in favor of difference generate new forms of diverse and therefore inclusive community. The world's artworks are produced in different styles. Some are immersive, some are screen-based, some are text-based, some are interactive, and some are static. The work's reach ranges from the personal to the political to the planetary, and the modes of memory work include documentary, remediation, and elegy. This structural and stylistic heterogeneity, a genuine polyphony, relates directly to the conference theme of entanglements. Immersants pass through fundamentally different experiences that embody the paradoxes of grief itself, simultaneously subdued and clamorous, indignant and empathetic, grounding and disorienting.
At the level of form, then, the work is dialogic in the Bakhtinian sense. It is open-ended, non-hierarchical, and non-linear by design. The heterogeneity of the works and their intention takes its cue from Eastern European polyphonic choral arrangements, wherein the voices each occupy a carefully arranged, complicated harmony and meld into a multi-layered sound. There is no lead vocal, but rather a unified casting of voices to fill the sound waves in an oral totality.
Memory Eternal is a project of grieving. It answers our research questions by offering a creative archive of the pandemic's traumatic impact, and it invites a somatic process of reconciling with realities altered in the wake of global events. This is a work of healing and understanding. It shows how we are at stake in each other's company.
Memory Eternal offers a creative archive of the pandemic's traumatic impact. It invites a somatic process of reconciling with realities altered in the wake of global events, healing and understanding, offering a spatio-temporal sanctuary for creatively archiving the personal losses often overshadowed by the upheavals brought about by various crises. Operating across zones of incommensurability and shared experience, Memory Eternal asserts the intersubjective basis of mourning. As Georges Vanden-Abeele notes in an article connecting the Spanish flu, World War I, Freud's essay on mourning and melancholy, and contemporary experience of the pandemic, quote, "We mourn precisely because we are always already in relation with others whose loss necessarily retraces the lines of that relation, a withdrawal that redraws the bounds of being together, but alone. There is no mourning without someone else to mourn. But our mourning together is also a mourning apart, and how or what we remember in our particular work of mourning may or may not be in common." End quote. As DH scholars, we've been thinking about this work in a number of intersecting frames, and this is what we wish to talk about in our discussion. As IDOC and as ELIT in relation to immersive empathy, haptics, and interactivity, as An Archive, and Living Archive as Memory Palace and Lieu de Mémoire. We invite you to check out our documentation on YouTube as well as our webpage. Thank you.